Hey YouTube, this is Zach with Achilles Financial, and today I'm going to be talking about Adobe. And Adobe is announcing earnings this upcoming Thursday. Today is Tuesday, December 8th, and I really want to talk about this earnings run up because as you can see, they are rapidly approaching relatively close to where they were in terms of an all-time high. And Adobe has had a brilliant step forward in terms of how they are handling the new work from home basis, the new creator content type of world that we now operate in. And I really want to highlight that I think that growth opportunity is going to continue. I think that Adobe has a lot going on in terms of their capability to continue to grow. And as they approach those all-time highs, I think that we're going to continue to see some of that opportunity. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about what Adobe does and the space that they operate in. So a few of the things that I would highlight about Adobe is in terms of the world that they control and operate is their huge product is something called Creative Cloud. And that is their subscription service where you're able to utilize all of their products such as Photoshop, such as video editing capabilities. And essentially what they've done is they've created a creator world where they have the capability to monetize that, and their biggest revenue increase is when they switched to that subscription service. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there as they continue to lead the field and really grow into other segments such as e-learning. I think is going to be huge for them. Adobe is heavily involved in the corporate world already, and I think that their only competition there going forward is going to be companies like Microsoft. If the Microsoft Suite product line comes out with something that could compete with their PDF editors, or someone like a Salesforce who is kind of moving into that space, which has been interesting to see, and I'm interested to continue watching them as well. And those of you who watch the channel on a regular basis know I'm a big fan of Salesforce too. So if we're looking at what the expectations are for Adobe going forward, I would highlight what the earnings expectation are coming into this upcoming Q4. As you can see, we've already got that basis built in where we are continuing to climb, and you see that forecast going forward over here. That is very good. We like it when we can see that. And we like to watch that capability going forward and see that it is increasing. And I think that the analysts have been pretty spot on kind of going forward, and you can see that a beat would be pretty impressive going into the next quarter as well. So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be watching for a beat, but I really like the company and I think that they have the capability to continue doing well. One of the things that I would highlight, recognizing that this is just going to be as of the last quarter, is some of their cash and short-term investments. I would like to see a company like this build a larger cash position, because I think one of the ways that companies like Adobe are going to be able to grow is through acquisitions. And seeing the lack of cash, I don't know if that's something that I would really like to see in terms of the growth capabilities. However, they do have a lot of organic growth, and I want to see that continue. So I'm willing to kind of let that slide. You can see on an annual basis that this is when they were kind of making some of those deals back in the earlier part, or rather a few years ago. What I'm looking at going forward, though, is very similar to kind of what you're seeing from the analyst price targets. And I have to admit, what you see here on the screen is a relatively new feature offered from TD Ameritrade. And I personally love it because it is a really easy way to see kind of where the price expectations go. So right now, the price expectation on the high end is $600. However, on the low end, you're still really looking at a $500 price tag, which is still slightly above where they're at today, another 0.5 percentage point higher. So what I'm going to be looking at going forward is, what do we want from these earnings? What are we looking for? The key things that we're going to be looking for are going to be associated with these items right here, the cash flow as well as the income statement. So let's go into the cash and the income statement first. I want to look at this on the quarter by quarter basis. You can see that revenue throughout this entire year has been basically flat. What we're really looking for is a huge growth in revenue. Now, those numbers that we just saw are going to lend itself more to this approach right here in terms of the total revenue. And if we see this trend continue, it'll be a really good year for Adobe. However, what we've seen is Q4 be the big year, but it's just going to be a question of how big, because what you see here, this is the big quarter for them. However, is basically on par with what we've seen this year, which is good. We like that. So that's what I'm going to be watching from Adobe going forward. So be careful when we're watching that. I personally like Adobe a lot more than Zoom in terms of what we're talking about in this sector. So that's what we're going to be watching going forward. One of the things that's going to be difficult to play associated with Adobe is, do we think that we're going to break out? Do we think that we're going to go back in kind of the 520 mark? I don't know on that. So that's one of the reasons why what we may see is kind of a lackluster earnings where they experience hundreds of percentage better year over year revenue and earnings. However, we're probably going to see some increase in cost. And for that reason, I'm hesitant to play the options. And those of you who are new to the channel, we do a lot of options discussions here on the channel. And when we're looking at options, what we're trying to do is see how much do people expect the stock to move. And that's one of the things that when we're looking at this particular screen that we have here, the expectation that the stock is going to move is pretty huge. A 20% or a $20 move right here before this really becomes profitable is essentially going to be a 5% earnings move. And that's kind of going either direction. You can see that on the put side, you can see that on the call side, and that 5% that I'm getting is just this $20.65 added to that $500 call. So if that's the case and that's what we're looking for, that would put it at all-time highs or kind of bounce back to these levels lower here. What I think is a better play here, and recognizing I'm not a financial advisor and this is just my opinion, would be to go with the shares. And what I would do is I would break out however much I would invest into Adobe before and after earnings. So if they go up, you can either decide, hey, I don't want to buy more. If they do go up kind of by that 3 to 5% margin, or they may even go higher. Or if they go down, I would still buy in because the company is still a golem. They just will not stop. They're going to continue to be a juggernaut and keep moving forward. And I like the long-term opportunities on this company. You can even see that kind of over the 3-year prospect of there is a lot of opportunity as they continue to develop in this space. Some of the things that I would highlight leading into those statements, or rather the reason why, is when we look at some of these items right here, you can see that they compare very, very well with the overall industry in terms of their overall valuation. And from a price to book ratio that you can see right here, it's a little bit of a discount. So if I'm looking at this going forward, what I want to see happen is not necessarily on this page, but I wanted to show you that they are incredibly profitable. And I really like that. So if they can continue these margins, with every dollar they add, they're instantly adding pretty much 30% to the bottom line, which is huge. But what we want to see is some growth associated with these numbers right here. Not as worried about the EPS growth, although that is important. What I'm really looking at is this revenue growth. You can see they operate in an industry where these numbers are killing it and they're not quite following at the same level. And for that reason, we expect a lot more from you, Adobe. So come on, pull it together. And lastly, I want to look at the financial strength. The one thing that I really like is they do have a very capable debt to capital ratio, and that in and of itself is really strong for me, and I want that to continue. I'm really a big fan of their overall Adobe position. Again, I just wish they'd have a little bit more cash so that they could make a acquisition if need be that would not come at the expense of a shareholder or a stock acquisition. And what I mean by that is if we go back to the fundamentals and you are looking at the balance sheet, generally speaking, if you see a large equity position like this and not a lot of cash, the way that a company will approach a takeover is through the equity option or a share price approach, as opposed to using the cash balance that they have available. So that all in all is a earnings run up into Adobe. The Zach recommendation is going to be buy the shares more so than the options, because the options are pretty expensive. You could attempt leaps, but again, they're very expensive. So that's what I'm going to be looking at going forward. You can hear my review, go over my plays by joining our Discord, and I'm going to have that in the comment section below or in the description. And if you found this content helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks everyone. Talk to you later.